Yuji saying "you are me" to Sukuna is one of the most misunderstood lines in JJK. And with Jujutsu Kaisen ending this week, I want to clear up this confusion. Because from what I've seen, a lot of people think that this was just a cheap callback to what he said to Mahito with "I am you." And while it is indeed a callback, it's because it's the exact opposite mindset that he had in Shibuya. And to make sure everyone understands, I want to go back to Mahito's line and why it mattered to Yuji at the time. The entire point of what Mahito was saying to Yuji was that they are the same person because they are basically a battle of ideologies. Mahito would unalive humans without regard in order to accomplish his specific goals. To him, humans were nothing. He couldn't care less about them and didn't give them a second thought. Because Yuji is a human, he would naturally be against this because he sees that human life as valuable. And so when he questions Mahito on why he is who he is, Mahito's response of saying "you are me and I am you" is the perfect answer. Because at that time, and for a long time afterwards, Yuji understood his role in Jujutsu Society as the guy who would exercise cursed spirits. This is something that even Jujutsu Society itself would teach him too, that he needs to exercise cursed spirits. And honestly, Yuji didn't really think too much about it. He thought, okay, cursed spirits are bad, I'm good, I must exercise cursed spirits. And then you realize cursed spirits aren't just these random entities, they are things with thought, with feelings, emotions, and things of that nature. Which is why Jogo and his group believed that curses could be the next humans, or that they were the, quote, true humans. And so to Mahito's point, Yuji unaliving curses is no different than Mahito unaliving humans. This is why Yuji has to accept this mentality, because at the end of the day, Mahito was right. Yuji didn't give a second thought whenever unaliving a cursed spirit, just like Mahito wouldn't for a human. So Yuji saying "I am you" is accepting that mindset and accepting that Mahito was right. And he even says this to Mahito, saying that his role in this world is simply a cog in the greater machine, and that his role is to simply unalive cursed spirits. If Mahito were to come back, he would do it again. And he accepts and adopts this mentality for a majority of the series. But we see this mentality slowly adapt and change throughout the entire Sukuna battle, and even solidified whenever he first drags Sukuna into his domain expansion and explains his entire life story to Sukuna. He even explains that his original goal was for people to have a proper death. But then he realizes that's the wrong mindset to have, as he sees a bunch of people being unalived like his brother, but were being unalived and were happy. Because despite the fact that the circumstances weren't ideal, and Yuji may himself disagree, because at the end of the day, Choso was happy. He got to protect his little brother, he got to spend time with his little brother, he got to see his little brother surpass him, and even in the end, Yuji finally calls Choso his big brother for the first time. So despite how Choso lived and all the atrocities he committed, and the fact that this wasn't a proper death, Yuji accepts that for Choso, this was a proper death for him. And in the same regard for Gojo, someone who lived in isolation for a majority of his life, and finally found true happiness and acceptance whenever he battled someone who was on his level, in other words, Sukuna. And so despite everything that transpired, despite the fact that he became a monster for his students by unaliving the elders and everyone else to ensure that his students would live a happy life, despite all of those atrocities and everything he's had to do in his lifetime, he died happy because he got to get fulfillment from Sukuna. So Yuji realized that the circumstances of one's passing isn't what makes them happy, and he realized that his original mindset was wrong. And he realized it was the circumstances of what you went through in life that helps determine who you are, which a lot of that is going to be based off of luck. So when he says "you are me" to Sukuna, he acknowledges the fact that Sukuna is a person just like Yuji, and that he held value just like Yuji, it's just that their circumstances were different. Yuji even says it himself, he was lucky to have his grandpa. He was raised by people who loved him. He was surrounded by people who loved him. Gojo, Megumi, Nobara. Whereas Sukuna was not. His parents didn't like him. They thought he was a monster. He unalived his own twin brother inside the womb to stay alive. And his circumstances simply were just not the best. They were not like Yuji's at all. So by saying "you are me," Yuji accepts the fact that Sukuna could have become Yuji had his circumstances been different. Had he been raised in the same circumstances that Yuji did, he could have ended up as Yuji, and Yuji could have ended up as Sukuna. Which calls back to two different things from Choso. One, Choso's last lines where he says it's not about forgiveness or not forgiving. Because it didn't matter whether Yuji forgave Sukuna or not, it matters that he wanted to give Sukuna another chance. And the second part that relates to Choso is where Yuki actually speaks to Choso in her final words, saying, "This is where you die as a curse, now live on as a human." Where Sukuna considers himself a curse, and his last lines were literally saying that to his core he was a curse. But Yuji wanted to extend the same courtesy that Yuki extended to Choso. He wanted Sukuna to have the opportunity to die as a curse and live on as a human, alongside the one person who would not only accept him, but was made to contain him, Yuji himself. So I don't personally think "you are me" was this cheap callback to "I am you." I think what it does is excellently portray the switch in mindset that Yuji has as a cog who's simply there to unalive cursed spirits, to the original mindset he had in the beginning of the series where he was a kind-hearted soul and wanted to use his strength to help others, just like his grandpa told him to. Now, for the record, this is always, again, my own personal interpretation. Let me know what you guys think about the You Are Me.